Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Coach and Benway podcast. This is the Weekly Bile for Saturday, November 3rd. We are at the doors of hell, if you will, of the Democratic hell, because this is the episode right before the midterm elections that are not looking very good for the Democrats at this time. So we're basically going to be discussing this and other weekly events that have happened from that lens. And so let me turn it over to Dr. Benway. And Dr. Benway, why don't you give us the precis of what's going down?
Well, the main precis is that I'm a little bit glum that this is the last Weekly Bile news report we'll have before the election. So alas, we will not be live tweeting or streaming the actual event. But basically what has happened, I'll summarize it very succinctly. A shooting occurred, people lost their shit. And then in the meantime, little Project Veritas, James O'Keefe decided to have little skirmish sorties out into the wilderness that are doing quite well for the Republicans. Add those two bits up together, you've pretty much got the political week.
Yeah, it's basically that. There was a Pittsburgh shooting, which was a tragedy. And from what I understand, the shooter was, just some crazy man who walked into a synagogue and shot up a bunch of people. 11 people, I believe, died, and that is a tragedy. Thankfully, there were no children or relatively young people involved, and that's a blessing. But this tragedy was used politically by the Democrats almost instantly, and of course, fate not looking kindly on the Democrats, the narrative didn't fit very well because the shooter, I'm not going to name the guy, he's a son of a bitch and he should drown. The shooter turned out to be, an anti-Semite, a hardcore anti-Semite who hates Trump. So who would have thunk it, So, so they can't pin it on Trump. And also there's the obvious fact, his son-in-law is a Jew. His daughter converted to Judaism to marry the guy. His grandchildren are Jewish. So to accuse him of anti-Semitism is absurd because, everybody knows that Donald Trump is a doting grandfather and is very, you see him all the time getting off the helicopter and the plane with one of his grandchildren. He adores him as any grandfather would. To accuse him of anti-Semitism is just stupid. But the Democrats, well, they're not too clever.
But you don't understand. According to CNN, Trump has radicalized more people than ISIS.
Oh my God! You saw that the Julia Yaffe, that moron.
And that wasn't even the first moronic thing she said that day. The first moronic thing she said that day was, as the journalist, I feel less safe here than I did in Russia.
Oh God!
And people had to point out to her the various, shall we say, run-ins with the Putin regime that journalists have had in Russia.
Yeah, like getting assassinated by Putin's goons and what have you. Come on, that Julia Yaffe, right? She is a horrible human being. Yeah, she was saying that that Trump had radicalized more people than ISIS. And Jake Tapper, who, by the way, is also Jewish, right? He had to basically force her to walk that back because they went to a commercial break. And when they came back, Jake Tapper said, "Julia, I think you have something to say." And she had to just eat crow live and just walk back that idiotic statement because even for somebody as partisan as Jake Tapper, it was beyond the pale. It was just too much. It was just a bridge too far, an idiocy too far.
The thing that you shouldn't forget, though, is that at the time, in the heat of the moment, he frankly said nothing.
Yeah.
He just let it go. And then one guy, the more conservative commentator in the group, basically looked at him and said, "Jake, what the fuck are you doing?" And what I suspect happened is a producer went up to Jake and said, "You're going to fix this now." Because not only did she do that apology later on, she also went on Twitter and wrote her little apology. And she did the typical
leftist apology,
fake apology, which was to say, it was the heat of the moment and I was speaking from the heart, this, that, and the other. That being said, blah, 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 basically taking it back by trying to reiterate it in a more acceptable manner.
I love the part when she says, she said her apology on air, but then at the end she said, "Yes, but it was not factual." Yeah, it was not factual even when it was a lie. It was an untruth. That's what you mean by not factual. But the thing is, her attitude was that it was almost as if it should be true, but it just actually isn't, you know. But her feelings, she feels as if it's true, and therefore there is some truth to it. And that's the thing. The Democrats have been infused by this whole postmodern, post-truth ideology. This whole notion that your feelings count more than facts, than actual reality. It's just bizarre, and we're seeing it in this election. This election is going to go terribly for the Democrats, and it seems that all of the people on their side are telling them things that are just not true. And they're coming to the understanding that they are going to lose the Senate. And we're going to go through the specific Senate seats. But there's also the real possibility that not only do they not hold on to their there is the possibility at this time that they could lose the House of Representatives. Now, that would be the shock of all shocks. If that happens, I mean, that's the Democratic Party is going to have a complete and utter meltdown. And I, for one, want to get the popcorn to watch that meltdown because it's going to be damn funny, if you ask me.
Well, it would be twice, 2 major elections in a row with the predictions, went south on them in a very noticeable way. I think the other important thing to emphasize here is that at the national level, the Democrats don't do well creating a narrative story.
No,
at that level. The Republicans, frankly, dominate at the national level. I mean, it's very hard to argue that with the campaign ads that Trump seems to have held in his pocket and distributes like little candy to his grandchildren. Every so often he says, "Okay, here's the situation." The latest ad was, "This is the GOP America. It's booming growth. All of these jobs are coming in. We've never had anything, come back like this. We broke the so-called, at best we could do is 2% in a healthy cycle in terms of growth. We're doing all right." Cut to the Democrat side, beat the shit out of people, kick people. And they stepped up, as I hoped they would step up, where they stopped just talking about bad things that happened to members of Congress. They really did show all the videos of Trump supporters getting pummeled in the street, windows being broken, basically shit hitting the fan. Very hard to counter that at a national level. It's just not on their side. And you even see where the strategy's kind of falling down. I think the best moment that happened after this, and it's going to sound odd describing it this way, but I mean it in the terms of the benefit for the GOP. One of the things that the Democrats, or shall we say the mainstream media, really wanted to have happen in aftermath of that Pittsburgh shooting, they really wanted to emphasize that the local Jewish community was having none of Trump. They considered him responsible.
Right.
So one of the bimbos on CNN had the chief rabbi of the synagogue that was the site of this shooting. She had him on and say, would you invite the president into this synagogue? And he said, not in any backhanded way by any means. He just said, yes, I would. He's my president. I am a citizen of this country. He is always welcome. And then he described in a few days later, he got death threats after saying that.
Yeah. That's really interesting. It's really interesting that a guy who said something that a man of God, this rabbi, he said the sensible thing, the thing of bringing people together, which is, that of course he was going to invite the president and allow him to come to the synagogue because it would be divisive not to. Because there are people who support Trump, whether you like it or not. And so to exclude him would be to, by proxy, exclude all of those people. And that's just divisive. And of course, you can't have that, especially at a moment of tragedy. And the mainstream media, which is for all intents and purposes at this point a propaganda arm of the Democratic Party, they kept trying to push the guy, because I saw that interview, they kept trying to push him, that woman kept trying to get him into that box. And she failed miserably because the guy was a guy of principle, and that he got death threats. I am so not surprised. What I've noticed is that the Democrats, what they keep trying to do is impose some national narrative that is like a top-down narrative as to what's going on, but the people are just not buying this narrative. And furthermore, what I've noticed is that, and I think most people have noticed this, is that, see, the Democrats and the media it's becoming increasingly clear that they are together, that they are one and the same thing. And they keep trying to push the latest event, tragedy, scandal, this, that, the other. And the second it is not effective, they drop it. It happened with the Kavanaugh situation. If Brett Kavanaugh really was this monster, he should be still investigated and he should be, in the process of being impeached. But the second he got confirmed and it was over, they dropped that issue like a hot potato. They went on to the next one, which was the bomb scare, right? The bomb scare and the guy, and there was like a whole hullabaloo. And then the second that didn't pan out, they drop it and they move on to the Pittsburgh shooting. The Pittsburgh shooting lasted a couple of cycles and they dropped that too. And now it's the racist ads, okay? That's what CNN is headlining as we're recording this. That it's just it's not just one racist ad, says the headline. It's a Republican strategy. They go from it's like locusts looking for something, and they light on one thing and light on the next.
Here's my attitude on this: their national strategy idiotically plays to votes that are not in play.
Yeah.
By that I mean, think about the argument that's being had here. Trump's rhetoric is inherently racist and is responsible for basically the second Holocaust on American shores. This shooting. I'm willing to bet that there are millions of people in this country who believe that. I also think that 99.999% of those people had already determined that they were voting Democrat.
Yeah.
Those votes were not in play.
Exactly.
I think the undecided voter or the moderate voter or whomever else you want to call in that category, votes that are in play that could go one way or the other, are looking at that and say, I think that's a tenuous connection at best.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Democrats are doing the flip strategy, which is focusing on the local election, focusing on the local issues.
Or you mean Republicans?
Excuse me, my mistake. The Republicans are focusing on the local issue, the local election, focusing on the Democratic candidate and chipping away at that Democratic candidate, but like bespoke, not like a global smear or a national sphere in this case. Because that's what the Democrats are doing. They're trying to paint everybody as Trump, Drumpf Nazi. That's what they're trying to paint all of the Republicans, whereas the Republicans are going after the specific guy. And like the Project Veritas thing with McCaskill, which was the first of several little coups that James O'Keefe has had. Why don't you take that topic away? Because that was funny as fuck.
Oh, this is basically a series of typical Project Veritas videos where you get the members of these local, usually they're Senate campaigns or governor campaigns, whatever it may be, and get the campaign guy to admit to something pretty embarrassing. So, if going back this was a little bit older, I think, if you look at the Arizona Senate race, I forget the name of whatever her name was, the Democratic candidate basically said, oh, Arizona's like a backward moonscape, Arizonans kind of suck, God help you if you do anything like Arizona. Yeah, it's probably a bad idea to say, you people are shit. How about you elect me to represent you? It's just not a good strategy. In the case of, I think, Florida, or in the McCaskill campaign, I think that was the Missouri one, more or less had a campaign manager saying, yeah, she's much more liberal than we let on, but you got to play it up to the podunk people. Yeah. Also, people don't like that.
Oh no, they hate it.
Worst case for my money, especially in Texas, the Beto O'Rourke, one of his campaign officials, was on camera basically saying that they are actually giving campaign funds to create material support for members of the various caravans that have tried to come through the United States. So basically aiding and abetting people breaking the law. That's probably really not going to do well.
No. I think that's the Beto O'Rourke is done. Okay, I don't quite understand why the Democrats, they're actually already positioning him as a potential future leader when he is going to lose the Senate seat, the Senate election rather, in Texas. Cruz is just blowing him away. Okay, so I don't even know how many. Because I'm looking here at the Cook Political Report, and the Cook Political Report is saying that the Cruz O'Rourke election race is a toss-up. It's not. I mean, Cruz is like firmly ahead, and that seems to be the problem going on with a lot of the analysis that is being presented. That a lot of this analysis is basically saying that, oh, it's a toss-up when it's really not a toss-up. Okay, because the Cruz, for example, of the Cook Political Report, just looking at it, it's saying that Ted Cruz is a toss-up. That's not true. It's over. It's saying that McCaskill is a toss-up. Not true. She's done. That here they're saying that Heitkamp in North Dakota is leaning Republican. That's sort of, well, it is true, but the lean Republican is more like 80% likely that it's going to be Republican. Even Menendez, well, at least they're being honest there. Sorry, I'm being disorganized here in like looking through the races. You want to go through it like step by step?
Well, yeah, we can do that. Before you go there, you brought up something that I want to actually address, which has been bothering me because I've heard it a lot, that people have been saying, oh, Beto O'Rourke will lose the Senate, but, he's getting notoriety and popularity. He has charisma. You just have it. The thing that bothers me about that, I hear that primarily from Mike Cernovich. Mm-hmm. So, you have to add a lisp to it. But, he says like, it's really special here. It's because he's got, brand recognition. Like this is going to be ridiculous, especially after the fact that you see not just what's going on in Project Veritas, but I frankly just don't understand what the hell Cernovich is saying after seeing that debate performance between him and Ted Cruz, where Ted Cruz is just the typical Ted Cruz kind of bad dad joke kind of guy. And Beto just looks like a kid who showed up for his class presidential debate.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just not, I do not see this charisma. I see a lot of money being spent on him.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that did the Democrats no good in the last election either. They outspent Trump God knows how much to one. Didn't work.
Yeah.
And before we kind of leave that thought, I just want to leave a nice little thought. Kudos to Ted Cruz for now owning he's the son of the Zodiac, because now he's just reposting happy messages with the Zodiac ciphers now.
Yeah.
It's just utterly madness. But I love that the fact that he's the kind of guy that can now own an image of a serial killer as a jovial laugh.
Well, here's something interesting that's happened to the Republicans. You see it with Lindsey Graham, you're seeing it now with Cruz, and you're seeing it with other Republicans, it seems, that they are copying Trump's trolling ability. They're realizing that the trolling culture works because you utterly make a fool of your opponent when you do it that way, and it also shows a certain wild streak, a certain the problem that we've been having with politicians as of late is that they're so packaged, they're so plastic. You don't believe that there's a pulse running underneath that skin, right? But with those kinds of posts, like Lindsey Graham, like fixing his tie, laughing as the hysterical lefty screams at him, right? He's just owning things, right? Or when Graham, again, I'm becoming like a total fanboy for him, because Graham the other day was on TV and he was just saying blah blah blah, and he finally, it was like live on CNN or something. He finally said, I'm sick and tired of this bullshit. It's just like, and he said it live, a U.S. senator on live national TV, and he's like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, he also said so and so people can kiss my ass. I honestly think the death of McCain was a liberating spirit, and to the point where. Well, first off, I do think that they are, adapting to the president. I will show them how to win. I think there's a lot of truth to that. But at the same time, I think especially some of these guys who I always thought were kind of tame in the Senate beforehand, I seriously wonder if John McCain operated as a bully in the Senate, trying to keep all these guys in line according to his standards of what a politician should be. So. And frankly, since he died, that rot has finally been aired out. It's like you got the fungus out of the basement, you can breathe again.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right, actually. At least that's apparent from an outsider's perspective, because we don't know the internal machinations of the Senate. But a senior senator like McCain would have had enormous influence and be able to pressure people, whip them into line and get them to act and behave in a way that he thought was, dignified, quote unquote. And a lot of times what is dignified is not necessarily what is effective. And we all know that. And the Republicans, for frankly decades, was the party of just like losing by decorum almost, you know what I mean? And now it seems that they've got like some gumption, and they also, the Republicans in general feel like the winning party. They feel like the come from behind, we're going to win this fucking thing kind of party, And that is a powerful emotion because it energizes the base. and when your candidates are coming from that corner, they just sound stronger. And yeah, you're talking about the Beto O'Rourke, Ted Cruz debates. Yeah, but if you just turned off the sound of that debate, the vibe coming off the candidates was one's a winner coming from a position of strength, lean and mean, and the other is like a deer in the headlights, right? And just turn off the sound. I mean, I've noticed that a lot of times in politics, it's better when you have a debate or something like that to turn off the sound and just ignore what they're saying, what everybody's saying, and just looking at the body language. And that is just much more effective as to who's to predict who's going to win and who's going to lose. Now, all the mainstream politicos are basically ceding the Senate, but they keep on insisting that the Democrats are going to hold the House. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure. I think that we might have another big surprise. I could be totally wrong, and I usually am in these kinds of predictions. But, it could be that the Republicans, eke out wins because so many of the seats are so goddamn close. And Dick Morris, who's like the best political analyst out there right now, he's got these little videos. He puts out like 1 or 2 a day. And they're like mini little gumdrops of wisdom. They last like maybe, 2 to 4 minutes at most. And he is basically saying that, yeah, sure, you have like some solid Democrat seats, solid Republican seats in the House races. But the toss-ups, they're a lot closer than people seem to realize. And so any little thing, we don't really know where the House is going to go. It could go anywhere. And a lot of people are lying to the polling people as to whom to vote for, because the Democrats have created this narrative that if you vote for the Republicans or Trump, you're a Nazi. And nobody wants to be considered a Nazi, even though you might like them more. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, I suspect that's the case. And what we have seen up till very recently is that the Republicans have really taken the lead in early voting based on the estimates that we're getting from exit polls on that front. I don't know if they're exit polls, but you get what I mean. And the other thing I noticed is they said this recent round of early voting has exceeded anything in the past in just terms of participation. To be expected, I think it's just the trend in dealing with voting these days. Mm-hmm. But obviously, if the Republicans are leading in early voting, there's been record number of early voting. That certainly doesn't do them poorly to have that.
Yeah.
I suspect what is going to happen, Mark, this one I actually feel comfortable making. I think Trump and the GOP is saving their best campaign ad for like the day or two before the election. I think Sunday or Monday, I think a really, well-made ad is going to drop, kind of just summarizing it all like Trump did last time. I think that they're going to, and it's just going to seal the deal on terms of the national narrative. I don't think the Democrats are going to win that. The degree to which they are going to win is if they can win locally. I don't pay that much attention at the House levels to know.
There's a serious problem with the Democratic Party as a party, is that first of all, they're completely disorganized and leaderless. There are a bunch of competing people, but nobody knows who's running the show. And at this time, it's very clear that Trump runs the show. For the Republicans, Trump is the guy. And everybody realizes, okay, it's, it was all good and fine to during the 2016 election to shit on him and all the rest of it, but he's our guy now, and we got to win now. Okay, so the Never Trumpers, they're clearly getting wiped off the floor, right? And the Democrats are leaderless, and so you have Clintonistas, you have identity politics people, you have the black. The Latino, and now they're having a problem with the Asians who are being, alienated from the Democratic Party in droves. They don't know what to do. The Democratic Party machine is a disaster. The Democratic National Committee is essentially broke, and nobody's really taking charge of it. They are just, and they don't have any strategy. That's the thing. They don't have any strategy at the national, state, and local level. No strategy. It's just trying to use the media as a propaganda arm, and the media has been very complicit in this and has been very diligent in this. But without any kind of strategy, it's not possible for them to really win. I mean, they might eke out victories, but it'll be more because of the individual politician as opposed to the party itself getting behind that candidate and helping him along. Whereas Trump, as the leader of the Republican Party, has been very diligent about going out to rallies in states where the Republican candidate needs his help, bolstering that support, going out there, standing on the podium with the candidate, with his guy, lifting up his arm and saying, "This is my guy," that shows real political leadership that is going to pay off. Even if the Republicans lose the House, all of those representatives that are in the House will be Trump guys, and they will be in line with Trump no matter what, because he's helping them get elected. See? And that's what the national political leadership has to do, help the little guy get elected. And if they're not doing that, as the Democrats are not doing, it's a free-for-all, Oh, man.
They're trying to do it, but they're doing it with someone who really isn't going to have any staying power, because the person they're trying to do it with is Obama. And frankly, it's not as if he's going to take charge again.
No, yeah.
It's that ship has sailed. It's a waste of, in some sense, effort.
Yeah. He's been
Trump, obviously, it's because he's still the president.
Yeah, Obama, with his appearances, I think has been hurting his brand. I think it was foolish of him. He had a good thing going. He should have just shut the fuck up and stayed on the sidelines of this. But no, he tried to help the candidates. I think that it's hurting his brand, to tell you the truth. And the thing that's kind of pathetic is that he keeps trying to take credit for things that have happened during the Trump administration. Okay. And
he gets himself set up so easily for, he sets the pins up and to be knocked down for the easiest retort, which is when he starts claiming, who you think got it started? You just turn around and tell him, Barry, you didn't build that.
Yeah. That's a pretty good one.
For those of you who don't remember, it was a big gaffe. I don't remember which election it was. I'm sure it was like a midterm at some point during his administration.
2012. Yeah.
It was 2012. Yeah. There was a big line where he was saying to various Republicans or something, or businessmen, when they said, all of these things that you do, you don't do it without the federal help. So you didn't really build that. Yeah. And he phrased it in such a way as to seem like all of the efforts of your business labor are a product of what the government deems worthy, which is just, at the very least, it was poorly worded, and it was something that people kept throwing at him all the time. And to have him now turn around and basically make the same fucking argument again shows he's a numbnuts.
Okay, let's. By the way, we have to talk about Project Veritas and James O'Keefe, the Republican Party. Oh, they must be thanking their lucky stars that they have a crazy man like James O'Keefe, because he's gone out there and really pulled some amazing political stunts. And thank God for hidden cameras. I mean, thank God for that. Because all of these exposés, okay, so there was the McCaskill thing. Then there was the Beto O'Rourke thing, where his people were basically giving material aid to the caravan, right? What else? There was the Florida gubernatorial race that was basically anti-white.
I forgot what the... Yeah, I think that one was the anti-white. I forgot what the big brouhaha was.
Yeah, it was his best friend, the Florida governor, Florida Democratic candidate for governor's best friend from college way back, a close advisor, though not officially part of the team of the campaign team, as I understand it. I could be wrong. Apparently, he got caught saying just anti-white rhetoric. I don't know the specifics of it. Because a lot of things have been happening, and so I didn't quite catch it. But it seems that Beto O'Rourke, James O'Keefe, is just going around and just wreaking havoc in the Democratic Party. There was a headline today, just as we were starting the show, that this one of the candidates, a ex-CIA's, this is the headline, okay, from the Daily Beast, okay. Ex-CIA agent's congressional campaign says James O'Keefe's Project Veritas infiltrated it. Okay, staff became suspicious when the women peppered junior staff with leading questions aimed at soliciting problematic answers. Okay, so this is the campaign of Democratic challenger Abigail Spanberger. I don't know what the race is. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't look like a race that's going to matter, to tell you the truth. But the fact is that the Democratic candidates must be freaking out, thinking that they're all under a microscope, because James O'Keefe has done so many, right?
Well, what's great about this, and I'm going to do this. It reminds me of a great little narrative thread that was in Star Trek. I'm going to reference Star Trek, specifically Deep Space Nine. So in the story of Deep Space Nine, there's a race that rules basically an empire that's starting to infiltrate the Federation's area of the galaxy. And they're run by, they're called the Founders. They're really changelings. They can take whatever form they wish. And they basically get into the Federation and start wreaking havoc by virtue of just being like infiltrators. They can blend into whoever you want. And there's there's a great line when this narrative gets taken off, where one of the dying changelings says, basically, we're everywhere, creating a sense of paranoia. And then later on, another changeling goes to the lead character and says, look at how this, Earth is like completely in lockdown mode. It's like they're sacrificing all the various quote unquote liberties they have. And the changeling says, here's the joke. What if I only told you that despite all of your fears, there's only 4 of us running around, fucking you around. But look at what havoc we've caused with just 4.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's James O'Keefe.
Yeah.
He, look at all of the havoc he's around, and it's only been like 4 or 5. Yeah, he probably has a whole bunch more, but that's the exact thing. Because if you think about what's really happening, you're creating a situation where all of the Democratic candidates, at the week that they should be focused on selling the message home hard, have to spend, let's say, at least 10 to 20% of their time looking over their shoulder.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a critical 10 to 20% that you need to close the deal.
Yeah, it's basically, it's crimping their style. It's crimping their style, making them feel not insecure and not able to just spread their wings and fly. And so because of this, any election, any competition like this is a game of inches. It's a game of just slim percentages or fractions of a percentage point. And James O'Keefe is just chipping away, and he's just one more thing chipping away at all these Democratic candidates. And here's what's interesting. I'm sure that the Democrats have some equivalent of James O'Keefe, who's looking for somebody who will say something similarly, bigoted, okay, or controversial, like looking for somebody who will say, something when we're behind closed doors, we Republicans, we just, have ourselves a good old little lynching, and use anti-Semitic slurs all the time. I'm sure that they have some group out there, and I'm sure that it's a lot more professional than James O'Keefe's outfit. Because James O'Keefe is just, he's just a wild man, right? But he's not a pro. I'm betting that the Democrats do have pros. I mean, people who were like in intelligence and shit like that. And that they're trying to infiltrate Republicans and trying to get them to say things that are, racist or bigoted or this, that, the other. And I bet they're failing, okay? Or let me phrase it, I'm positive that they're failing. I have no doubt that such an outfit exists. And the fact that I know that they're failing is because we haven't heard any kind of revelation. I mean, think about it. Do you think that they would hesitate for a second to release some video of, some, minor staffer on Ted Cruz's campaign saying, oh, yeah, we hate the Spics, right? Do you think that they'd hesitate even for a fraction of a second? No, they'd run with that. They'd run to MSNBC. They'd run to CNN. They'd have it all over. I mean, they'd have Jimmy Kimmel banging that drum, all night, right?
Well, especially since they can turn around and say if someone says they hate the Spics and they say, does that include their candidate?
Well, you know what I mean. But
yeah, exactly. But that's the point. And I think, it's also if you think about it, it's going to be hard for them to find something offensive. In part because when you have, I forget the guy's name, but the governor or the guy running for the governor of Georgia, which is also a competitive race, he just released a campaign ad basically, saying, I'm as a, crazy conservative Republican as they come, offensive as all hell. I said, I hear this is I own a gun that no one's going to take. He pulls out these fucking shotguns left, right, and center in his ad. He then says, here, this is my truck. I have a big wide flatbed in the back to gather up any illegal immigrants I find, and I'll take them over the border myself if I have to. I'm running for governor of Georgia. It's very hard to find something, incrementally offensive to their audience. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that, I think that this election is going to be just a major one psychologically. Okay. In the scheme of things, I don't think that much is going to change. Because we're still going to have a Republican majority in the Senate, probably a bigger one. I'm guessing it's going to be 53-54 Republicans to Democrats.
I'm not going to make too much of a prediction on the exact numbers of the Senate. I think the House is still at play, so it's entirely possible that the the Democrats still, will win the House. I'm not going to deny that possibility. I think it's going to be interesting. And I think I see in the tone of the Democrats, there's anxiety there where maybe a month or so ago there wasn't. And I think that will contribute to something. How much and to what extent, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, by the way, this paragraph I had highlighted, I forgot to read it, but I'll read it now. It's about Veritas. This is from USA Today. They're talking about James O'Keefe's outfit, and like I said, the Republican Party should get down their knees and thank their lucky stars for James O'Keefe, because he's the gift that keeps on giving, right? Those known to have been targeted by the Veritas Group in this election cycle include Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill, and because of this intervention, parenthetically, she is now known to be way behind. She will likely lose that seat. North Dakota Senator Heidi Heitkamp, also way behind now, likely to lose. Tennessee Senate candidate Phil Bredesen, again, likely to lose. Arizona Rep. Kristen Sinema, who's running for Senate and is also likely to lose. Florida gubernatorial candidate Andrew Gillum, also likely to lose. Oregon Governor Kate Brown, that race I'm not sure. And House candidate Abigail Spanberger, also that race I'm not sure. So, the Veritas, they have been incredibly effective. And by the way, this kind of stuff, this was the dirty tricks of the Nixon era. Okay, this is what it is. Okay, and I look at it and I think it's almost like high school hijinks. I can't take it seriously because they are not soliciting a crime or anything like that. They're just getting their actual views on video, on tape. Yeah. I can't see this as
which is why to me it's almost insulting to have it compared to the rat fucking that was done on the Nixon regime, because remember in McCluskey, the senator, I think he was a senator from one of the northern states, they basically had someone to write on his stationery a fake letter that says fucking Canucks or something like that, basically slurring someone. So they just made shit up. Yeah. Against guys. James O'Keefe, for whatever they want to say about deceptive editing, is just literally video. Here's what you fucking said. Yeah. And it seems funny to me that you can say deceptive editing all you want. Every single goddamn time O'Keefe does this, the Democrats have to distance themselves from said target in the campaign. Yeah. I think the Beto O'Rourke campaign also just did that. They had to say, "Oh, this person doesn't represent who we are," and then I think the Florida case may have been the same thing. So, what does that tell you? So, you can make any case you want. I just don't think what James is putting out there is, basically true rat fucking chicanery that you got in the old days.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, see, for it was the Canuck letter, and it was Ed Muskie. And the Canuck letter was basically, they put out a letter on his stationery saying, "Oh, these fucking Canucks," and nobody believed it. But what killed him, what killed Ed Muskie, was that he went on TV, or he went in front of a podium, and sort of like just saying this is not true, blah blah blah. And he started crying. He started crying, and he came across like a pussy. That's what killed him. Okay, so it was like not. It was a reaction to this event, as opposed, he didn't know how to handle a troll, basically, because trolling didn't exist at that time, or it was in a different form. And so that's what killed Ed Muskie's campaign. It wasn't the Canuck letter. It was his reaction to it, okay, which is pretty funny, because most of the time that's basically what's going on. So anyway, what's next on the list of things to talk about?
Well, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about what had happened at Gab in the response to the shooting incident, because so for those of you, all 0.2% of you, or all 1/2 of the 1% who is unaware, the shooter of the synagogue was on Gab, basically said, this is where we know that he hated Trump. I think his last line was like, "Fuck your optics, I'm going in," kind of thing. He, because of that, surprise, surprise, all of the various components in the back end who are enabling Gab's business suddenly start pulling out and said, oh, GoDaddy, you can't host Gab. You can't have your website registration through us. You have to do something else. Their hosting provider. Oh, you can't do that. You've broken our terms of service. Go down the list.
Yeah.
And it goes out. The joke of the matter to me is whether you like Gab or not, the situation is clearly this. Gab is a competitor to the likes of Twitter or what have you. Twitter has just as much anti-Semitic stuff on it if you really look for it. And frankly, you don't have to look very hard. This was clearly a matter of, this is a good chance and good opportunity to get rid of some competition. Certainly the guys who run Gab didn't make it harder for that argument to be made because they're on Twitter willing to throw shit at people who throw shit at them. Yeah. That just made it easier on everybody. But the funny thing about that whole situation to me was when I saw, again, the prepackaged conservative jokes of our corner, particularly Annabeth Stuckey, who put her foot in her mouth on that one, said, Gab is just no good guys. I'm totally believe in free speech or whatnot, but they are just no good. And then she always Twitter can also do whatever it wants. It's a private company. They should
conservative
they can do what they want. But then conservative show, and I turn around to her and I'm like, you know what? You also don't like Gab. It's a free company, so I guess it bothers you because they made fun of you a couple of times.
Yeah. Exactly. She has a neocon
this is why I always say,
she's a neocon show.
Just be very, very much so. And I think pretty much, and I wanted to stress it because this also leads into another element. Any name you see connected with CRTV is no one to be trusted. Yeah. The other bimbo of the week, Candace Owen, also fucked it up because she decided for whatever reason, the black exit of the Democrats Party, Blexit. Mm-hmm. She had a little hat for it, and she tried to tie my friend, my brother Kanye West designed this for us and whatnot. And Kanye basically said, "No, my name's getting associated with things I don't want. I'm out of politics in general." Yeah. People were trying to interpret him saying something negative against the president. He made it clear subsequently that it was not against the president. It was clearly Candace fucking Owen. And again, CRTV bullshit. A woman who overstepped her bounds. A woman who I did not trust since the very beginning. Everybody associated with that channel is a fucking joke, including Roaming Millennial now. I mean, if you just look at what she tweets recently, it's nothing particularly interesting other than a few passing, basic pro-life sentiments by virtue of her being a Protestant. Yeah. That's pretty much all you get.
Now, CRTV, it seems to me, just neocon shills. And they are sort of like not just merely corporate Republican, which I don't have a problem with. I'm temperamentally sympathetic to them. What I have a problem is that they're neocon shills in the sense that it's usually there's something else going on there, and there is the sense, the hint that it's more globalist in outlook, and not particularly interested in conservative ideas, but just using conservative ideas in order to get the numbers. And that there's some.
Well, they all love Nikki. They all love Nikki Haley, who's actively antagonistic and undermining of the president's foreign policy. They all. I mean, Annabelle Stuckey, whatever the fuck her name is. I can't tell you how many. It doesn't require. It only takes a few hours to go by before she doesn't sing the praises of Ronald Reagan, the man who arguably helped as much as anybody else to get us into the mess we're in right today. Nothing these group of people say is particularly insightful, particularly intelligent, particularly helpful for what I think our crowd tries to go for. Your best to recognize them as such.
Yeah, because it seems to me that Candace Owens, right? She was suspect the second the whole what was it called? Social registry, was it, or something like that?
Yeah, something to that effect. I forgot the details.
Yeah, it was a doxing website, and she never distanced herself from it. And after that, I just couldn't believe anything that she said. I thought that she was full of shit. Because she is full of shit. She is very, very smart. She is an extremely smart young woman. And she is very personable and very attractive. And when she focuses on you, I bet you feel like $1 million, right? But she's crazy. She's crazy and she's out for herself. She doesn't care about any kind of principles or positions. She just wants to ride the wave of the zeitgeist. And also, there's something fundamentally self-destructive in her psyche, and you can tell. There's something, an impatience and a willingness to play with fire That's a deadly combination because ultimately she's going to get burned badly. You know, she got this incredible relationship with Kanye West, which she could have leveraged or used in ways that are extremely productive, and yet she went and blew it up. I mean, she blew it up in record speed. And Kanye West probably is smart enough to say, "No, I don't want to have anything to do with Miss Candace Owens ever again," because God knows what she's going to do in the future, right?
She does come across as the type of person who would slash your tires.
Oh yeah,
I'll say that.
After a bad breakup, for sure. Oh yeah, you know it. Yeah, and probably boil your bunny while she's at it. Yeah. No, look, the
I'm not going to be ignored, Kanye.
Yeah. For those of you who don't get it, we're quoting from Fatal Attraction. No, she's bad news. She's bad news, and I think that to tell you the truth, I sort of like, on the one hand, think that she could be a great power to proselytize blacks and make them sort of like wake up to how the Democrats do have them on a plantation. But on the other hand, I think that she's way dangerous. She doesn't have she doesn't have patience. She doesn't have the patience to just like calmly wait for things to come to her as opposed to going to get them. You know what I mean? And that comes with age, quite frankly. And she just doesn't have that patience, that knowledge that she doesn't have to push the issue, because she pushed the issue with Kanye West and this stupid Brexit thing. There's this YouTuber I'm starting to follow called Loyal Logic. He's a tiny channel. He's got less than 150 subscribers, but I suggest you check him out. Loyal Logic pointed out something quite true about Kanye West, that Kanye West, his whole approach is always about unity. He's never about dividing people. He's always about bringing people together. And that is what he self-consciously believes in. And so the whole notion of Brexit was going to be a non-starter with somebody like Kanye West, because it's way confrontational. It's one thing to wear a MAGA hat and not spit on the MAGA hat, but it's another to say, oh, you, my fellow black people, should leave this Democratic Party and the other blacks who support it, and either join the Republican Party or be unaffiliated. That kind of divisive approach, which is what Candace Owens was basically advocating, is just anathema to somebody like Kanye West, because Kanye West ultimately is an entertainer. He has to bring people together to build an audience, whereas in elections you build by breaking down the other guy. Okay, and so yeah, I think it was inevitable. I think that Loyal Logic got it on the nose, that it was inevitable, this kind of situation where Candace Owens would antagonize Kanye West. I'm just surprised it happened so fast,
Well, that's certainly a very generous reading of the situation with Kanye. I prefer the more cynical one, which was, when it comes to Kanye, you can call him a Uncle Tom for chit-chatting with the president. You can say he's crazy for doing all the things he does. But as soon as you associate his name with a shitty designed shirt, he fucking, burns the fucking bridges as soon as you can even raise them to across the river. So, I mean, that's kind of my attitude. And around that, I wouldn't be surprised if that's not wrong. And it's not entirely uncompatible with your reading. If that's a matter of him, being very conscientious of his brand. And, the Candace Owens shit just wasn't going to slide no matter what the ultimate cause was. I know, some people are trying to use this as the example to say, see, it was a waste of time dealing with Kanye and everything. And my attitude always like, waste of time. It cost the president nothing to have him in the office for like a few hours. And, if that's I've said for a very long time, and especially when it's in a precarious situation like this, you don't need to win the black vote. You just need to get the Democrats to lose a little bit of it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really all you need.
That's exactly right. By the way, I wanted to go back a little bit to the Gab thing. That Gab was deplatformed just across the spectrum, by Stripe and PayPal and their hosting and all the rest of it, and GoDaddy, blah blah. At the same time, what happened, as we were recording this happened yesterday, that Ethan Ralph's show got turned down in the middle of the of the stream, right? Now we've had Ethan Ralph on our show, on this show, the Coach and Benway podcast, in a previous episode, and he's a great guy, and his show is consistently in the top 3 trending live streams when he's on. Okay, now it got turned down like in midstream. The allegation was that there was anti-Semitic super chats. Well, of course, how exactly is Ethan Ralph to blame for anti-Semitic super chats? I mean, he doesn't have any control over that, right? And supposedly it was the YouTube algorithm had been in place so that any kind of super chat with objectionable language would be automatically flagged and taken down and not appear. So how exactly is it Ethan Ralph's fault? And well, his channel got taken down on his show got taken down on his channel, and when he tried to start up again on Zidane's postmortem show channel, it also got taken down. So that's a kind of interesting situation.
Yeah, and I think you glossed over a key factor here, that is at play. It wasn't even that, I mean, yeah, the super chat anti-Semitic stuff, certainly that could be an excuse. I didn't see officially yet what the nominal cause was. What is going on at this time is that the Wall Street Journal was or is going to release a report or some sort of article on the Ralph retort, talking about, oh, it's the hot bread of bad thought and all of these nastiness. And, the reporter who did that already before this event even started earlier in the day had locked down her Twitter account to a protected state, knowing full well she had expected what was going to go on. The suspicion is that the Wall Street Journal is trying to play a little game against Ethan Ralph in particular, and this group of YouTubers in general. My suspicion is that it probably is somewhat related to that. And it would, unsurprising, it's a variation arguably on what they did to PewDiePie, just on a smaller scale. And the other thing to keep in mind is that the logic in play here, if in fact they want to go down the route of these super chats inspire neo-Nazis, what you're effectively trying to do at this point is the same argument that was used against the president, because he says what he says, through some sort of enablement, Nazis kill Jews. That's the argument you try to make, that the president is responsible for that. Didn't work in the case of the president. It may, by virtue of the general stupidity of humanity, work in this case. I doubt it. At the very least, it's the same logical stretch. Ethan's not responsible for whatever happens in a super chat. There is always, I don't care what video you put up, there, 1488 Gas the Kikes is going to come up. It, I guarantee you could be a show about cooking and it will come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be cooking, and they'll mention like what's going in the gas oven.
Yeah, exactly.
The Jews,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's absurd. Ethan Ralph himself has always been extremely careful about the kind of language or terms or ideas floated on his show. And whenever anybody says something, untoward, he either pulls the stream down, or he outright tells the potential guest who's going to say something out of line. He says, "Don't say it, don't say it, or I'll pull you." And that's his only recourse. So I'm unclear as to why it's his fault and why his show got pulled down. You were telling me before the show started, I believe, that the messages that they'd been getting were like from not robotic messages, but from like some actual person who had written explaining why that they were being pulled down. So likely it was a capricious decision.
No, they didn't get an official reason. It was just the way that the note was written led Ethan to suspect that it was written by a human.
Okay. And so if that's the case, then it was basically a capricious decision. And this happens all the time in Google, YouTube and Gmail and all the rest of it, that some SJW gets pissed off at you and decides to yank you. Like last year when they yanked Jordan Peterson, they yanked him across the board. It wasn't just his YouTube account; it was also his Gmail account, and that was just really surprising. I'd actually never heard of somebody getting their Gmail account showed. So, what's that about? I mean, that was surprising. It was eventually reinstated, but it was basically some rogue operative inside of one of these corporations, and because they're so opaque, we have no idea what's going on there or who's making these decisions that are not just merely threatening people's livelihoods, but creating a huge chilling effect of like, we all feel like we're like walking on landmines and we don't know where the mines are. And it just becomes incredibly uncomfortable and unfair, because you start to realize that other people who are much more outrageous, but they're of the right political stripe, well, nothing happens to them. They can casually and confidently do their shows and no harm is going to fall them. And that is just unfair, but that seems to be the case. And it causes more resentment. I mean, the funny thing is that by doing these things of like, silencing Gab, the Ethan Ralph show, it just creates more resentment and hatred. And people hate these gatekeepers more and more, because all of those users of Gab, right, they now hate Stripe and PayPal and GoDaddy. And what do you think they're going to do? Do you think it's not just going to be that, I'm not going to use their product? It's going to be a potential political force that, when the time is right, there is going to be some sort of massive uprising insofar as, yes, let's regulate these companies and turn them into public utilities and zero their profit potential, so that we're all safe, so that we all don't get deplatformed. I mean, that's the inevitable result. That's what's going to happen, okay? Because that kind of resentment, it eventually expresses itself. Because you put the pressure lid on long enough, it's going to fucking explode. That's just the law of physics. It's a law of human nature. I'm ranting a bit, but
the best I can do is quote Jeff Goldblum from Jurassic Park: "Shitposting finds a way."
Shitposting finds a way. Yes. Shitposting finds a way. Absolutely, goddamn right.
I mean, and to a certain extent, to your point, whether or not this, like, the besmirched YouTubers turn around and say, we're going to start a political movement to, censor or regulate YouTube. I don't know that it would work that way, but what I think would happen was essentially political forces in the United States who already have an interest in punishing these companies for being anti-conservative will proceed to do so, and by virtue of alienating important people, I use in scare quotes, let's just say, by alienating influential people on YouTube, what's basically going to happen is wind under the sails that companies like Google and YouTube need for grassroots to support in order to resist stuff like that kind of fritters away. It's in large part why it was much easier to get rid of net neutrality last year, in large part because we're already on the receiving end of these companies not living in accordance with their so-called free and open internet bullshit. So that this would just extend.
Yeah, because there's the issue of the copyright issue in the European Union. Yeah, Susan J. Wojnicki, or whatever her name is. The ultimate irony. Her initials are SJW. Well, she's a chairwoman rather of YouTube. She put out an appeal to YouTubers to help on Article 13, the European Union article that is going to pass. That is basically it extends copyright to an absurd level and makes it virtually impossible to make memes or modify previously existing content, copyrighted content. I mean, it's just going to be a nightmare. It's going to be expensive for YouTube, extremely expensive. It's going to be a logistic nightmare for them. It's just going to be a huge hassle. It's going to hurt the ability to meme. It's just going to cause a mess, right? The only people who benefit are corporations that own these copyrights, right? And so Susan Wojcinski, or whatever her name,
Wojcinski. That name is Polish, and I will apologize.
Wojcinski. Okay.
Wojcinski, and I will apologize. I will apologize for her, because Poland produces very wonderful, intelligent people. A few rotten apples get through the cracks. What can I say?
Well, the point I'm trying to make here is that, I lost the train of thought here. It was actually, okay. The point I'm trying to make here is that, she alienated the people who would have supported her. And so when her call to arms about the European Union effort went out there, nobody paid attention, because she's alienated so many of the people who would have gone to the barricades to fight this issue. But everybody's like, well, fuck you. I mean, you fucked us over so much for so long, and you made us jump through all these goddamn hoops that now you want our help? Fuck you. That's basically the attitude of YouTube content creators, right? From the big ones to the little ones. I mean, shit, even PewDiePie, he's not going to lift a finger to help YouTube, and he is their biggest guy. And he's not going to help them because, why should I help a company that consistently tries to fuck me over? And that's the thing. These guys, they don't seem to realize that their SJW nonsense has just alienated their customer base to such an extent that when things go bad for YouTube, which will eventually happen, this European Union thing, it's going to be catastrophic for content creators. But content creators are just going to migrate someplace else. They're going to migrate to some platform that's going to be more underground that doesn't have these restrictions, right? So yeah, I think that I think that the SJW nonsense of these companies is eroding the loyalty of their base, and because of it, when they need this base, the base is just not going to be there for them rather. And I think that we're seeing that with the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party, by shitting on middle class and lower middle class whites and blacks as well. I mean, shitting on the lower middle and lower classes and the middle classes, and doing the whole SJW thing in favor of minorities. Those voters, those middle class voters, are not going to show up for them come November 6th, and you're going to see a whole shitstorm there. Yeah.
Well, I mean, my response to all of it is tough shit. I mean, I don't give a shit about the Democratic Party. I don't give a shit about YouTube, even despite being on here. I really don't. It's not my livelihood. And tough titties. I mean, they had it coming and they deserve it. But the reality of the situation is they'll have a shit fit afterwards again. If they lose, if the House is lost, it's possible that the House will be lost. It's also possible the House will be won. I still maintain that it's all in play. But let's say the Republicans hold on to everything. They'll just have a bigger shit fit than they had in 2016.
Yeah, it'll be pretty funny.
And then we get to see the real fireworks at play. And this is the thing I will say though, for this week, going back to where we started with the shooting. It was funny. After the sort of fake, the fake bomb business, I could have thought I thought to myself, is this a sign that we're getting closer to that Civil War moment? I said, no, this is all bullshit. As soon as the shooting of the synagogue happened, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is a step closer because this is real shit that's going on. I'm willing to bet that there will be let's say, like I said, let's say the Republicans hold on to everything. I could easily see the left wing losing their shit to the point where they try to stage their own fucking stunt like that. Yeah. I don't know how, why, or where, but I could believe it because it's a double frustration moment.
Yeah. I think you're right.
After everything that was happening in the last 2 years, the thought that we couldn't win, Allahu Akbar, and boom.
Yeah, I think that you're right. I think that if the Democrats lose badly meaning that they lose control of the House, because the Senate is a lost cause. But if they lose control of the House, the Democrats are going to have a collective meltdown. I mean, the left is going to have a nervous breakdown, and it's going to get ugly because those breakdowns are usually not pretty. Okay. Anybody who has any experience with somebody having a mental breakdown, well, yeah, multiply that by several million. That's basically what's going to happen. I mean, these shows like Kimmel, like Colbert, like not Jamie Oliver. What's his name? The Brit with the glasses.
That fucker. Who cares?
They're all going to just freak the fuck out, and you're going to see it. And you're going to have more of these. What was the name of that screaming girl or screaming it thing, that when Donald Trump was sworn in, who screamed to the sky. That was goddamn funny, but we're going to have a lot more of those people. But to your point, I think you're right. I think that they're going to start expressing themselves by way of violence. And I think that it's going to get goddamn ugly. Yeah. So on that cheerful note, I think we're going to call it an episode. Okay, this has been the Weekly Bile for November 3rd, 2018. And Dr. Benway, do you have any final words for us before we go?
Well, to quote from South Park and Bruce/Caitlyn Jenner, buckle up, buckaroos.
Buckle up, buckaroos. That's a good way to end the show. So we'll catch you later and take it easy and see you soon.